So we want to welcome the parents and students tonight to Montgomery Blair High School for the middle school program on the selective magnets. We want to also welcome our families who are watching live stream. For those of you who are interested, you can follow up with watching this presentation as well. Later, it will be posted on the MCPS website. So thank you so much for coming. We are here to talk a little bit about the Humanities and Communication program and the Math Science, Computer Science program, our two selective magnet programs. We have 3 in the county, and these are the 2 we're going to talk about tonight. Let me introduce myself. I'm Jeannie Franklin. I'm with Montgomery County Public Schools. I'm in the Division of Consortia Choice and Application Program Services. Our teams support the special program assignments, and so we want to make sure that tonight you have a lot of information so that you feel comfortable with the admission and program information from tonight. Okay, so tonight we'll talk a little bit about middle school. We have guests here who are also going to present information about their programs. We'll talk about the admission process and the field experiment that is occurring with that, and then we'll take some frequently asked questions. We'll share those with you, and then we'll have an opportunity to answer some questions from the audience as well. So I do want to introduce our special guests tonight that are here. We have the principal from Eastern Middle School, Matt Johnson. He's going to wave to you. We also have our principal from Tacoma Park Middle School, Alicia Dini. Welcome, both of you. And then we also have our coordinators who are going to present this evening as well, Matt Kerwin from Eastern and Scott DeGasperis from Tacoma Park, and they will be presenting to you tonight too. So lots of good information tonight. So we are really excited about the options that are available in Montgomery County Public Schools. But one of the things we want to make sure that you are aware of as you're exploring this as an option for your child is that all middle schools have some things in common. So all middle schools have either a 7 or 8 period day or schedule. All offer high school credit programs, meaning they offer high school credit in their math, their world language. Some of them also offer high school credit in some of their courses, their fine arts, their technology, some other electives. So it's important that as you're exploring all of these options for next year for your rising middle school student, that you learn what your middle school offers as well so that you can determine what is best for you and your family. The other part is that all student schedules in all Montgomery County Public Schools have a schedule that's comprised of English, science, social studies, and math, in addition to other courses that are required and elective, and they vary from middle school to middle school. So all of that is really good information as you're considering all of these different options. So as you are listening tonight and listening to the programs tonight, one of the things that you might want to think about as you're considering this for your child is that students who thrive in these programs tend to demonstrate some of these characteristics. They perform above grade level. They may lack an academic peer group at their local school. They demonstrate curiosity and intrinsic motivation. They show strong critical and creative thinking, a high level of commitment, sometimes really trying to problem solve or find a solution. They work well collaboratively and independently, and they exhibit a high interest in one or both of these programs. What's important is that students, you grade 5 students that are here, we know that you are interested in multiple areas, not just one areas. So one area though, as you're looking at these themes, is do you have an interest in them as well? One, not just 2, multiple areas. So it's very likely that you can thrive and succeed in many areas. So one area though, as you're looking at these themes, is do you have an interest in them as well? So before the coordinators come and talk a little bit about their programs and what's unique about their programs, we wanted you to be aware of some of what they also have in common. So both of these middle schools are located in Silver Spring, Maryland. And what that means is if your child does not have these middle schools as a home middle school and they get invited to the program and accept, they will change schools. This will become their new middle school. Each program has 100 seats for out of area, and local students who are invited to the program don't have to take those 100 seats. So 100 out of area students if that's not your local middle school. The admissions process is selective, and it's based on a variety of criteria. It's a multiple criteria process. It is based on a student's academic profile, so their grades, the report cards, their reading level, their assessment scores, in addition to their instructional need or the availability of an academic peer group at their local middle school. So that's very important to understand as well. And then students in these programs will take up to at least three magnet core courses that are part of their program. And the rest of their day is with the local comprehensive program. So that is the composition of a magnet program at our middle schools. So I want to introduce Matt Kerwin. He is going to talk to you about the Humanities and Communication program at Eastern Middle School.
Thank you. So good evening again. My name is Matthew Kerwin. I'm the Magnet Coordinator at Eastern Middle School. And at Eastern Middle School, the Magnet program specializes in a focus on the humanities. So Eastern Middle School has a traditional 7-period academic day. What that means for our Magnet students is that they are able to access unique instruction in a few core humanities classes. And those consist of Humanities English at all 3 grade levels, 6th, 7th, and 8th, Humanities World Studies at 6th, 7th, and 8th, a Humanities Media class, which is a class that teaches students to be film producers. They learn to make documentary film, they learn to make animated film, they learn to present ideas in different ways. And then in 6th grade, there is also a unique humanities literature class. That class is only for 6th grade. It opens up an elective opportunity for 7th and 8th grade. So what makes the humanities program unique for our students? What is different? First of all, in terms of structure, the teachers in the Magnet program are given dedicated planning time in order to collaboratively develop interdisciplinary instruction and emphasize interdisciplinary themes. So the English teacher, the World Studies teacher, and the media teacher will sit down and they'll look at their upcoming schedule. They'll identify literature that's being read in the English class. They'll identify what historical context needs to come out of the World Studies class in order to build on that, on the readings. And then the media class will come in and look at what presentations are coming up. How can the students present their learning in new, unique ways? And all 3 of those teachers will collaboratively plan different experiences. So that's something very different than other schools. In terms of structure also, our administrative team, as we plan our master schedule, we will schedule the Magnet students in cohort groups for their Magnet-specific classes. And our building is structured in order to put specifically the English and the World Studies Magnet classes next door to each other. The physical construction of the building has an accordion door, and the students will go directly from English to World Studies or World Studies to English with that same group of students in back-to-back periods. This doesn't sound like something significant, but it actually really becomes very significant in the planning of classes, because what it allows the teachers to do is have a great deal of instructional flexibility. The English and World Studies teachers can, if they choose to, open those accordion doors, and they'll provide double period or 90-minute seminar instruction where both teachers are teaching the entire group of students together. Other days there'll be traditional instruction where there's 45 minutes of English, 45 minutes of World Studies. In other classes, the World Studies teacher might keep the students for all 90 minutes, and then the following day the English teacher would keep them for all 90 minutes. It provides instructional flexibility so that depending on the activity, they're able to use the time most effectively. In terms of instruction, what makes the program unique is that we start with the advanced curriculum, but our teachers accelerate it and compact it, which provides more time for them to dig deeper into the material and expand into broader elective or extra topics. They're able to bring in art and drama and creative writing into the instruction, into the curriculum that might not usually allow that in the English and the World Studies classes. So for example, our English class at the end of 6th grade will actually read the play Our Town, which some 6th grades throughout the county use, some don't, but our 6th grade class will actually put together an entire performance of this in which they are acting out all of the roles, they're filming it, they're producing it, so it's not and that's not only live acted, but it's also filmed and shown later to the students. Students will be offered literature and text 2 to 4 years above grade level, so it is above the advanced in terms of reading material. And then in terms of a real focus, we focus on helping our students to become documentary filmmakers and work on their expository writing skills. So students will work on film composition and editing using Final Cut Pro software throughout all 3 years of instruction. Our media classes have Macintosh computer labs. Students have a tremendous amount of film equipment that they have access to. We really look at it through a backpack journalist sort of lens. They have literal production backpacks that have a digital camera, a boom mic, a collapsible tripod, and students will then go out and they'll find people to interview based on a topic they've selected. They'll reach out to these people, the team will go out and interview them or invite the people back into the school, and they work as a production team. There's an interviewer, there's a sound technician, there's a videographer. When they get back to the school, they take that film and they cut it down and they edit it, and they put it together with the research skills and the research that they've been doing in order to create documentary film. They're also working on thesis development through these projects and their writing skills in order to create the script and the narrative. It's something that is started in 6th grade, and they work on the skills and develop them. There's a vertical articulation all the way up through 8th grade. Much of our work that is really unique with this interdisciplinary study is the collaborative projects that the students are working on. And there are a number of projects that they exhibit within the school, but students are also participating in national and international competitions such as National History Day and the C-SPAN student competition. So those are some of the ways that instruction and the structure of the classes are unique and different in the humanities program at Eastern Middle School. Thank you.
Hello, and I'm Scott DeGaspers, the coordinator at Tacoma Park Middle School. And at Tacoma Park, we have a similar structure in our schedule. We do have an 8-period schedule, and it's a block schedule, so it's actually 4 periods a day, odd and even, and each class is 90 minutes. But out of the 8-period schedule, the students in the Magna program take 3 classes with only students in the Magna program. That's mathematics, science, and computer science. And then they take all their other classes with all the kids in the school. So, 5 out of their 8 periods are with all the other kids in the school. We do have elective courses in world language. We have Spanish and French up to level 3. And then we also have a really great arts elective program that I always like to highlight. We have offerings in music, theater, art, creative writing, TV production, and family and consumer sciences. You can go to the next slide. And then I'll highlight our specific courses to give you an idea of what distinguishes our program from what might happen at your local school. So first off, our mathematics. In math at Tacoma Park, we really try to focus on more abstract thinking in mathematics, real problem solving in mathematics, not just learning algorithms to step through math, but really how to think and conceptualize mathematically. We also use mathematics to model, as a tool to model the real world, to communicate mathematically, to model the natural world as we learn it in science, and I'll have some examples as I talk about that. The basic sequence of our math is students in 6th grade take magnet investigations in mathematics, and then magnet algebra in 7th grade, and then magnet geometry in 8th grade. And all of our classes are established around an established MCPS course. So for instance, magnet investigations in mathematics is our advanced pre-algebra course in 6th grade. So there is an investigations in mathematics course from the county, and our course covers all of that content, but as Mr. Kerwin said, we compact it, we accelerate it, so that it creates room to draw in more ideas and concepts. It draws in room to go into greater depth in certain areas. So for instance, we'll pull some algebra topics down into Magnet IM, such as set theory and things like that that are traditionally taught in an algebra class. We'll pull those down into Magnet IM to start to get that ball rolling with algebra so that we can weave that thread into algebra with connections across the grade levels, and then also create room in algebra for more extended topics there as well. So they'll go into things like set theory and number theory, more abstract concepts, group theory, things like that in algebra. And then in geometry, similarly, it's compacted, accelerated, and we cover units that aren't even part of the regular honors geometry class. Like we still do a logic unit, which used to be part of honors geometry, but the curriculum has been revised and changed. But we still do a logic unit in our magnet geometry. We also do a special topic, geometry and art, which is kind of a high interest topic the kids really enjoy, looking at geometric formations and artistic expression. And we do other sort of more advanced abstract concepts like affine geometry and some different things that, like that. Now in science, again, similarly, the county has established science courses for middle school, and we start with that part of the curriculum, but we, again, compact, accelerate, create room in the curriculum to go into greater extended areas. So an example I can give you is, chemistry is part of the science curriculum in middle school. We teach chemistry organic chemistry in 7th grade, but then we extend that into inorganic chemistry, and the kids learn about biochemistry, with the biology of digestion, the chemistry of digestion, carbohydrates, lipids, and then they go into genetics, but not just like hereditary genetics, which is the normal parameters of middle school curriculum. They also branch into molecular genetics and study about DNA structures and transcription and translation and the biochemistry, the molecular biochemistry of the genetic process. We also look for ways to interlock math and science and to really show how mathematics can be used to express the natural world and to model the natural world. For instance, research is a big part of what we do in our science curriculum. Every student does a research project every year. We have research presentations by students at the end of the year to present their work. And in the context of learning about how to establish and create a structured scientific research project, in mathematics, in Magnet IM, they learn about dimensional analysis. So dimensional analysis is a tool that they can use when they collect their data and create their experiment. They can use that language of mathematics to express their understanding in science. Another great example of a mathematical model I like to highlight, because it's a pretty advanced topic, but the kids really love it. It's, you may remember if you study biology, the Harvey-Weinberg equilibrium. And this is a pretty complex mathematical model that models genetic expression and the relative ratio of genetic components in a population and how they stabilize, how they fluctuate based on different selection pressures. And it's a big mathematical model that the kids work with in science class. We also bring in a lot of guest speakers. We try to hook kids up with mentors as they're doing their science experiments so they can get out in the field and maybe work in a lab for certain times to be supported by a scientist as they do their project. And you go next slide. And then in computer science, I do like to mention that the magnet programs are the only middle school experience where you can have 3 years of computer programming. That usually doesn't happen until high school. We do start off in 6th grade. In 6th grade with computer science with, learning some of the basics of computers, how they work, hardware, networking, concepts and ideas, how computers are really integrated in our lives and how they kind of function. Then by the end of the year, they're learning, getting into some programming, learning how to go behind the scenes in Office to use a Visual Basic to kind of work in the change of functionality in Office. You may not realize you can do that kind of thing behind the scenes with Office products. And then they eventually get into Python programming. Python is a programming language. They'll start working with that towards the end of the year. And then in 7th grade, they continue on full speed with hardcore Python programming. They also learn web design and web development in 7th grade. They also do work with some Android apps. They learn how to develop cell phone apps in 7th grade. And then in 8th grade, they continue with Python, but then they also get into more advanced web design, specifically about web programming, using JavaScript and Flash and things like that. So it really kind of builds over the course of the 3 years in computer science. Thank you.
Okay, so that was a lot of great information about the programs, and you'll have an opportunity to talk with them afterwards and learn a little bit more if you have some follow-up questions. But we want to talk a little bit about our new opportunities in Montgomery County and the admissions process. So in 2016, Montgomery County Public Schools received a report discussing a little bit about recommendations for how to expand equity and access in our special programs. And we have a variety of them, but our 2 programs here at the middle school are examples of our special programs. And they are selective magnet programs, which are based on a variety of criteria. So in terms of the report recommended some different ways of making sure that families who may not know about these programs have access to learn about them and have their children considered. So we started this process last year with grade 3 and the Center for Enriched Studies, formerly known as a Center Program for the Highly Gifted. Some of your children might have participated. And as a result, we had a lot of great learnings that we are now going to apply to this field experiment for both Eastern and Tacoma Park. So the Board of Education agreed to conduct this field experiment that's addressing 2 major areas of our process. The first major area is that the program expansion is going to occur for middle schools, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. And in addition, the admission process is going to be adjusted this year, and one of the major components of that is that there is no application. Everybody who is a grade 5 student who is a catchment feeder to one of these 2 schools or to these schools will be part of the consideration for one of these seats. So parents don't have to know about these programs in great depth. You don't have to research tremendous amount of information. There's no application. Every grade 5 student who feeds into these programs will be considered for one of the seats. So the first thing we're looking at is expanding the enriched and accelerated programming that's available. So the first way we're going to do that is that these 2 schools, Tacoma Park and Eastern Middle School, host a magnet program. And so what we want to look at is these schools will look at a magnet course offering at their school where all students can take the course. So currently the magnet courses are offered through the students who are invited to the program. So one way of expanding access are the students who are local students at the school will also have access to a few courses or 1 or 2 courses at the school that is considered a magnet course. The second way of expanding is we're looking at what great things these schools have done in terms of courses, and for schools, other local middle schools that don't host a selective magnet program, these schools would also get one of these courses, 1 or 2 of these courses. So that's another way of expanding access and sharing the good things that these schools have done. So we'll talk a little bit more in depth about those 2 pieces. So one of the things that we're doing in the admissions process is that there's no application. So hopefully all of you that are in this room received a letter from Dr. Navarro, our Chief Academic Officer, who outlined a little bit about the process. Because Montgomery County Public Schools has so much data and school performance information on your children, we use that information to give us information about your child's ability to be a potential candidate for one of these programs. So there's no application. The good thing tonight is you're here hearing about this information. You can talk with your child to see if going to a different middle school for a magnet-themed program is a good match for them and start exploring that. The other part is so that's October. So what's going to happen after the first marking period in late November? So what will happen is that all of the grade 5 students in the catchment area, so there are about 8,000 students, will all be centrally reviewed. We'll look at school data and assessment data, and we'll also look at reading levels. All of that information will be part of the central review. If your child has the potential to thrive in enriched and accelerated programming, then you will receive a letter in December. So all 8,000 families will receive a letter in December saying your child has been centrally reviewed and here's the outcome. And I wanted to point out on that white piece of paper, the FAQ, on the back of it shows you what the outcomes are. It is number 6. So every family who received a letter from Dr. Navarro will receive a letter, and after the central review, the letter will say your academic needs can be met by your local middle school, demonstrates the potential to thrive in one of the programs, in both of the programs. And so those are the outcomes, okay? So that's what your letter will say. The letter will also say that your child, if identified, will be invited to test in January. So on the blue and yellow brochures, you will notice on the back that we crossed out the word December. We wanted to still pass these out because there's a lot of good information in here. The month is January, if you wanted to write that in, but the month is January where students will be tested. And your letter will specifically say when your child will test. Most students will test on Saturday, January 6th, But because we have to accommodate the number of students we're anticipating, students may have a different date in January. But generally, many students will test in January 6th, but your letter will be personalized to your student. Okay? So if you're wondering if your elementary school is part of the catchment area, it's on your white paper as well, the high schools, but these are also the high schools in which your elementary school may feed into. If you're unsure about that, if you received a letter from Dr. Navarro, then you're in the right place about that. If your elementary school is here, then this is the right place for you as well. The other program that we have another magnet program, Clemente Middle School. It's in Up County. There are about 40 elementary schools that will be feeding into that program. They also have their information meeting tonight, and they're going to conduct their admissions process through the traditional, which is parents apply, they take the test, and there's a selection committee. That's what we will also be doing in terms of a selection committee. We will also be doing that. I did want to make a mention for some private school parents. I know that you're here with us. Our private school parents, because there's no application, what we would like for you to do is we have our contact information on our documents. We want you to call our office, and we want to get your name, your number, and your email. What we want to do for you is we are going to send you an interest form to complete, and that information will have more comprehensive information about the test date and what other items you can send, and to complete that interest form on behalf of your student to be considered for one of the seats. So let's go ahead and look at some of our frequently asked questions. So how are students identified for evaluation, which includes testing? So we use a multiple criteria process, and that will happen in late November. So we will use a lot of information from grade 5, that's occurred in marking period 1, and we will use a multiple criteria process to determine if your child has a need for accelerated and enriched instruction. So to give you a little information about that we have 8,000 students. We anticipate between 38 to 40% of those students will be identified for needing enriched and accelerated instruction. So 3,000 students is about how many students we're anticipating that will be identified. If you find, though, that your child is not identified when you receive your letter in early December, parents can request to have their child tested. If your child was identified, you can decline to have your child tested. If you agree with the letter, you don't have to do anything at that point, okay? We're going to take some questions at the very end, okay? Can we go to the next one? The next question, how are students selected for each magnet program? So after students receive their letter in early December, and they've been identified for a program, they take the test in January. That information, plus all of the students' school information, the reading and math information, report card grades, and the outcomes from the test will all be compiled, and a selection committee meets. It could be from 12 to 14 people sitting on a selection committee, and what they will do is they'll see the information of all these students, and they will make recommendations for the 100 students for the Tacoma Park program, and then make another recommendation for 100 students for the second program, for Eastern's program. Okay? The process is competitive, and it's a combination of looking at all of the criteria. One of the questions we had is the test a major indicator? The test is not a major indicator. What the selection committee is looking at is a pattern of performance, and also looking to see if this student has an intellectual peer group at their local middle school. One of the questions I think is really important and might be helpful if you have specific questions about transportation and how that works now. Transportation is important. This is a rising grade 6 student getting on a bus, and it's not a neighborhood bus. Transportation is handled centrally, meaning the central stops are usually at an elementary school or a library, but some are obviously safe for students to meet, but the parents usually have to get the student to the central stop. The central stop picks the students up. They could have a bus ride anywhere from 30 minutes to upwards of an hour on the bus, and it's the same time coming back. And so each of the schools have similar configurations in terms of the network of buses, and so it's important to talk about that piece, but it shouldn't be the reason why a student doesn't consider the program. Many of the students realize that it can be a lengthy bus ride. They use the time to relax. They use the time to do their homework. And so it is just something to consider as you're thinking about all of the different options for your child. So here's the timeline. It's now October. You're here learning about the information meeting. We had one at 5:30. Thank you for being with us at 7:30, and thank you to our friends online. At the end of November, when your child will be getting their report card around that time, you should also be expecting to get a letter from an MCPS office indicating the results. And that, again, is number 6 on the back of your paper. You will be getting one of those letters. Then in January, you will then get information if your child was identified and is going to be tested about the location. The white paper says January 6th. Just want to remind you that for some students, it might be a different date, but it will be very personalized and specific to you on your letter. And then in February, parents and students will receive the results of the selection committee. And at that time, you'll find out if you were invited. We also have a group of students who are part of a wait list. That might be 40 to 50 students. That group of students is part of the wait list in the event that some of the 100 students decline their seats. And then the last letter is that you've not been selected. So these are the contacts. So we're going to take some time to answer some of your questions, and if you have questions that are for the general group, that's great. We want to help answer some of those. If they're pretty complex, what we'll do is we'll try to connect with you and try to answer them. If you don't get your question answered tonight, we do want you to get them answered. Please, it's on our contact paper, but please email Matt Kerwin, Scott DeGasperis, Emily Tien is on our team, who you can also contact, and myself. We want to make sure that you have lots of information. The very weird thing about this process, if you've gone through this before, is there's nothing to do right now. There's no school recommendations. There's no teacher recommendations. There's nothing else you have to do until early December when you get your letter. And so that will be your next step at that time, okay? Thank you all for coming. If you decide that you've had enough information or you've gotten enough information, we ask that you just exit quietly, and we'll go ahead and start taking some questions.
Yes. I have a general question. My kid was in the private school from grade 1 to 4, and then just moved to a public school for grade 5. So in this case, what should I ask the form you said for the private school? Or, because there's nothing much for my kids in the private school, public school record, only the half year. So that's enough information? Only the first period?
The first marking period will be used to identify your child.
Not fourth grade. And
correct, not
because
fourth
he never
grade.
take the park exam, and then there's no, that'll be okay?
Right. So if that's the case and we find there's information, we'll contact parents about any missing information, if necessary.
Okay, because I think for the fourth grade and before, they take some park exam. I know there's some public, so that'd be okay. And also, is there some sample questions for the January test? Because in the old system, there's sample questions and like mathematics and the Raven test, and also the...
Correct. There are no sample questions
just
available.
Last one.
Yeah, there are no sample questions available. What we do recommend for your student on the day before, on the night before the test, is make sure that they get enough rest, they eat a healthy breakfast, and that you encourage them to do their best. Those are the most important things.
Okay, so the location of the test will be announced later, right?
Correct, in your letter.
Okay, thank you.
Are the curriculums available for both magnet programs and then just your local middle school to see what, this more specific information about what's offered?
Well, the middle school curriculum is available on the school system's website, the general middle school curriculum. The magnet curriculum specifically is not posted anywhere. It's just not, I don't know.
How many students will be invited for the test?
We anticipate approximately 3,000 students may be invited to test, depending on how many agree to test or decline.
So you don't have the number? You're not sure about how much?
We won't know until till late November when we do our central review.
Okay, so for next school year, every middle school will have accelerated kind of course.
So no, not every not every middle school will have an accelerated course specific to the magnet program yet. This is a field test or field experiment, so we want to make sure to try the curriculums out at some schools. We'll know those schools probably in the springtime when we announce them to the Board of Education.
Hi. Yes, I'm wondering if you have a child who is in the compacted 5th, 6th grade math class, but they go to the Humanities program or are accepted into the Humanities program, how is their math treated in the middle school?
I'm going to let you answer that.
I can handle that.
Yeah.
So sure. So Eastern Middle School has every middle school math class that Montgomery County offers, with the exception of the magnet math classes at Tacoma Park. So this year, compacted math students would start in the IM class, just like they would in any other middle school throughout Montgomery County.
So we're going to follow the microphone, and we'll try to get both sides, all sides.
Our son is in a centers program, which is not his home school, but both home schools are in the clusters there. But we have not received a letter yet.
The only letter parents should have received is the letter from Dr. Navarro explaining the new field experiment. So you might want to double check your address with the school, and please call our office to also validate that information we may have. Okay?
You mentioned reading assessments, math assessments will be reviewed. I'm assuming then this might be like MAP M, MAP R. Is
Correct.
that correct? Okay.
It says on here one of the results could be your child could thrive in both magnet-themed programs. So how does that, like, do they test for both of them? Is it two separate tests, or, and then do you guys pick which one you think they should be in?
So how it will work is that students who are surfaced or identified for both programs, they will be taking just one test, and then they will be part of two different selection committees. So there will be a Humanities and Communication Selection Committee that will review the students, and there will be a Mathematics, Computer Science, and Science Selection Committee that will review those students. And students can get offered both schools or both programs, but you can only accept one.
In the math program, I think this was partially answered by you earlier, but in the math program versus are there honors level courses for the other courses that are not part of the core magnet school program?
For English and World Studies, we offer the advanced curriculum that Montgomery is offered in any Montgomery County middle school for English and World Studies.
Hi, there are some middle school programs to which admission is granted not through this process, but by lottery.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if it's possible for a student to submit an application to both and how those timelines line up.
That's a great question. So there is the Middle School Magnet Consortium, which involves Argyle, Loiterman, and Parkland. They also have themed programs, and their whole school magnet programs. Those are interest-based. So what happens for all of the grade 5 students is that around December or January, your local middle school might be reaching out to you to complete a registration card for a grade 6. So that is typical across the county. Then if you move through the selection magnet process by having your child tested, you will receive an outcome in February. Then if you also went through the interest-based lottery, you will also receive the outcome in February. So what will happen is you just need to make a decision at that time which one you accept.
Following up on the question about the humanities classes at Tacoma Park, you mentioned that advanced English is offered there. Are all students in 6th grade, for example, automatically in advanced English at Tacoma Park, or are some students in regular English and some in advanced?
All the students are in advanced English, but most of the sections are all of the kids in the school. That counts for, say, 90% of the kids. But then we have a couple designated sections that are what we call supported sections that use modified materials and modified methods to kind of support kids to attain the goals of the advanced curriculum, and those are specifically designated sections, and there's usually 3 of them in each content at each grade level.
Good evening. One of the slides, you mentioned that you want a broader, easier access for local students to the special class. It doesn't mean if I live nearby Tacoma Park, I don't get into the magnet program, I can still take, let's say, computer science class or English literature class.
So when I mentioned broaden access, what we were finding is that parents who knew about the application to one of these programs had an advantage over parents who did not know about the programs. So that's what I mean by broaden access. Now, in terms of expanding access to the magnet programs, the programs will exist as they are now. For students who are invited to the program, will take their 3 core magnet courses together and then have an opportunity to take other magnet courses in the school, but local students who attend that school will also be able to take them.
What happens for children who weren't in the US system before? My daughter is in grade 5, but she didn't actually school here for the first 4 years of elementary school.
So what happens is if your child is currently in Montgomery County Public Schools, she will have comparable data that we will be able to use. If there is missing data, that information will not be held against her or him when we go looking through the selection committee. She will also be able to take the assessment like all students and will be able to be evaluated like all other students.
So my question is really basic, and I may have missed something.
Okay.
It has to do with the relationship between the screening that occurs before December and the testing that occurs after.
Okay.
Do I understand correctly? So all the kids get screened automatically, certain number bubble up as being eligible or targeted for these programs, then do all the kids that are interested in the programs take the test?
Good question. So, might be helpful if I use some numbers. So, there are 80 elementary schools that feed into Eastern and Tacoma Park for consideration. Of those 80, there are about 8,000 grade 5 students, just 8,000 grade 5 students. Of those students, a central review will occur to determine which students they may have the potential to thrive in accelerated and enriched programming. We are estimating about 40% of those students may have the capacity to thrive in one of these programs. So those 3,000 of the 8,000 will be invited to test. Now, if there are families who say, I don't want to test my child, they can decline. If there are families whose child was not identified as one of the 3,000, they can request testing. Just following the microphone. Can you raise your microphone?
Thank you very much for
thank you.
putting all this together.
Okay.
It's a great effort that you guys are doing. And,
thank you.
Thank you. So my daughter's homeschool will be Argyle Middle School.
Okay.
Absolutely, right now is Harmony Hills,
Correct.
right? And then she get into the highly gifted program.
Okay.
And is coming to Pinecrest. Okay. Now, the middle school will be Argyle, but we are really interested in getting into the Tacoma program. Okay. What should be the right direction in order to get into that?
So what will happen is you don't have to do anything else. We have your child's information, we have your child's data, and when your child is completing first marking period and you're expecting the report card, you're also going to get an MCPS letter saying what your next steps are for your daughter if she wants to be considered for the program.
If I have a child in one of the centers for enriched studies, presumably earning an A in high grades is going to be more challenging than in a regular program. Is that going to be taken into consideration when you're reviewing the data?
So a student who is currently in an accelerated center currently, that is not necessarily an advantage. Their performance may indicate that they have a need for the program, so that will be considered, but not necessarily that they were in an existing center program for acceleration and enrichment.
2 questions. First, Do you take into account any data from 4th grade?
So we do not take into consideration at this point any data from 4th grade. If there's any change with that, we will indicate that in our letter to parents. But at this point, it's first marking period of 5th grade, which is a compilation of everything that's happened up until 5th grade.
Second question, if the child is identified for testing for both the humanities and the mathematics, this is a follow-up to the former question, must they test for both, or may they opt to test for one or the other?
So the test is one testing session. That information can be used for both selections. They can decline anything at any point. But a parent, if a parent wants their child to be tested for one program and not the other, it's fine. They don't have to be considered for the other program. But it's the same test for both programs.
Hello. You mentioned that the review committee will take into account students' intellectual peer group.
Correct.
Can you explain what that means, please?
Sure. So one of the policy for gifted and talented in Montgomery County Public Schools is that the programs are designed for students whose needs can't easily be met at their local school. So in this case, their local middle school. So we are going to be looking at instructional need, meaning does your child have an instructional peer group at their local middle school? So we'll be looking at the same data, the reading, the math, the reading level, those kinds of information, and the assessment to determine if your child has an intellectual peer group.
Hi. Yeah, I was curious if there are similar themed magnet programs in the high schools that would provide continuity for the enrichment.
So it depends on where you live. So if you live in the Down County Consortium, those students in grade 8, after they finish 6 through 8, go through a choice process. And in the Down County Consortium, there are a variety of different academy programs that are available to students, and you go through a choice process. There are also high school magnet programs that they feed into. Montgomery Blair has a mathematics, science, computer science magnet. And then they also have a communication arts program that's available to a certain eligibility criteria of students. We also have, a lot of our high schools have local signature programs. They have a number of advanced placement courses. So I think thematically, we do have some connections and some vertical articulation opportunities for students to continue studying a theme. But many of our high schools are so comprehensive in their offerings, students will probably get many of their academic needs met at virtually any of our high schools.
Great, thank you so much. Curious about the student voice piece.
Sure.
So without applications, without teacher recommendations, how do you hear about student voice and their interests and real commitment to the program?
That's a great question. So one of the things we did as part of our field experiment for our elementary programs is we had a non-scored question that students can just write and complete a short, brief essay. It was non-scored. And the idea was that the selection committee could read a little bit about a student's reaction to a question or a prompt to understand and to get a glimpse of what their interests were or how they responded to a question. So that's where the student voice came in. And that was a result of talking to a number of gifted and talented experts about how do you invest the student voice into this process without it being so regimented. This is really about them expressing their reaction to a prompt. That's helpful for the committee.
Hi.
Hi.
Can you explain the difference between taking honors classes and magnet classes and how that will affect the ability to take AP classes and earn college credit classes as they move forward into high school?
Let one of our magnet coordinators take that. Thank you.
I think the opportunity to take AP classes is really not going to be impacted by whether you're in a magnet program or not, whether you're taking advanced classes or not. It's really about the track that you move through, and everybody has the opportunity to take AP classes in high school. Did that answer your question? Well, it's basically like what we described there, where the magnet program classes are faster, the curriculum is compacted, and more content is brought into it. So they cover more material than the regular advanced curriculum classes do.
So, a couple quick questions. If you could run the numbers down, I know you had 3,000 people invited, students invited to test. How many seats actually in both programs? And then if Tacoma Park or Eastern is your home middle school, and then the opening of how many students will that open up to all those, everyone in the school, or will there be some prerequisite for students taking some of the magnet courses, or how's that going to actually work?
So we start off with 8,000 students who are part of the catchment area, and to be perfectly frank, all 8,000 students are not interested in either one of these programs. They're going to be very happy with going to the local middle school, which is totally fine, and it's testimony to our local middle schools and how they're happy about that, because they're in their neighborhood. They may know the teachers, they have legacy or relationship. So that's what we start off with. The 3,000 students are an estimated number of students we anticipate will have the potential to thrive in one of these programs. So 3,000 students will potentially take the test. It could be 2,000 because 1,000 could say, no, we don't want to do it, or 300 could say we want to do it. So we're just looking at some of these numbers. And then what happens at the selection is that 100 out of various seats are offered to students who essentially are the outliers at their local middle school, and they would be invited to Tacoma Park. 100 would be invited to Eastern's program out of area. If you're a local student, you're also being considered. If you're competitive with the group, you don't take away from the 100 students, you get invited into the program. So we are looking at you the same way we're looking at all students, if you're local students as well.
Hi, I've observed a lot of variation in grading both within schools and certainly across schools. How do you plan to account for schools that are tougher graders or easier graders?
So one way that we do that is we're looking for a pattern of performance, and so the assessment that students take in January is one of that helps to give us a sense on, it's another criteria that helps us with that kind of information. So we can't account for that specifically, but using the assessment that students take in January will help communicate to the selection committee a pattern of performance in addition to their school data. Okay.
So I'm also looking at the numbers and thinking, hearing you talk about increasing access, and ultimately 200 kids are going to be offered these spots, and you're talking about 3,000 potentially being identified that may need additional enrichment, and then also talking about increased access. And I guess I'm wondering, is there a plan to increase the numbers, add additional programs like this? Even just looking at sort of the kids who are thriving in an HGC program, not all of them would qualify for a spot, and just the numbers don't seem to add up to me.
Right. So I share the numbers because it's been a question that we've been getting, but again, of the 8,000, many families, the majority of grade 5 students do not in the past have applied to these programs. Our interest in having a no application is that there were many parents who were interested but too late. And so we wanted to ensure that all parents had the opportunity to learn about this. So since we have a lot of information on your students, we can help you that way. The other part about having the potential to thrive in enriched and accelerated instruction doesn't mean that these are the only 2 schools that provide that. What it means is your child has the potential to thrive in enriched and accelerated instruction, and your local middle schools, by virtue of their instruction and the number of high school credits that they offer, will also be able to program for your child. Many of you may start investigating your local middle school and find that that's a perfect match for your kid instructionally. Some of you may find, no, my child is really interested in the thematic programs at one of these 2 schools. We want to go for it. Some of you may say, we are really interested in the Middle School Magnet Consortium, thematic programs as a whole school magnet. That's fine too. So you have a variety of different options, but the letter that's going to come out that in November that says your child has the potential to thrive is not saying that they need a seat at one of these 2 programs. It's saying that they have the potential to thrive, and as part of your partnership with us, we're going to see if this is a good match for them. But also, you might find that your local middle school or another program might be a good match for them. Oh, so let me just finish that. There is, as part of our recommendation, to look at expanding programs throughout the county, and so that is one of the considerations the system is looking at.
Could you say a little more about the difference between the mathematics that students will be exposed to in the magnet math curriculum versus the mathematics they'd be exposed to in middle school if they're on the compacted track?
Well, like I said, we start with the core course that the county offers, let's say algebra. And, we cover all the content of the regular algebra curriculum, but we cover it faster, and that allows us to kind of make room in the curriculum to go into greater depth with things. So we explore more abstract concepts and things that are not really part of the Curriculum 2.0 algebra curriculum. Am I... Okay. So the fact that he's on the compacted curriculum creates room in his trajectory to take an advanced pre-algebra class before taking algebra, right? Which again compacts it, so it moves, in that sense it moves them along faster. What we're trying to do is not necessarily move them along faster, but we're trying to create greater depth, to use that compaction to draw in depth rather than push kids ahead. So in elementary school, I think the goal the goal for gifted math students is a little different. As we get into secondary school, we're really trying to really bring in the depth of understanding of the complexity of mathematics.
So we have time for 2 more questions, and we're going to close the event out. And thank you to our online viewers, and some of us will be here for a few more minutes after. We just ask that you get your grade 5 students home, and also be aware that as you have questions, tonight is not the only night that you can ask questions. Our contact information is here, and I do want to release our team because we have been here since 4:30 to prepare for the 5:30. But all your questions are really important, but I'm going to release them at 8:30 so that they can get to their families and maybe eat dinner. Okay, question?
If our November letter says potential to thrive in one of the programs, can we request that our child is still tested in both programs?
Correct, you may. That will happen in early December in your letter, and you'll have some more details there.
I think I'm the last person.
You are the last one.
Okay, thank you very much. You said you started the program in 2016. So do you have enough data to sort of extend so you sort of brought in this pool so everybody has a chance? And the second question is, who takes care of the change of school assignments? Are you the program that takes care of it? Or
Yes,
the
we are
parents?
the program. We're the office that will help with the change of school assignments. We'll do that. And yes, that's a good question. When we did expand the pool of students who were getting accelerated and enriched instruction from last year, they're in 4th grade now. We anticipate next year it'll be a big pool. But the other way that we address enrichment and acceleration in the school is that some of those schools were part of a field experiment to get an enriched literacy program. So we recognize that there are large numbers of students who require enrichment and acceleration at their local elementary school. So we are field experimenting with that as well, which is what we want to learn for middle school as well. So I'm going to close out. I want to thank you all so much for your attention and your patience with us tonight. Thank you. I do appreciate that. That's very nice. We were happy you gave a hand clap to our coordinators. Our information is here. Email and phone calls are helpful if you want to speak to us specifically. Thank you all for coming tonight.